AM 1220 KHTS 98.1 FM and hometownstation.com. Carl Goldman with you. In the studio we have Joe Messina, who is the Hart School Board President. And all this morning we are going to be interviewing candidates from the Santa Cruz Water District, our elementary schools, and our Hart School District as a way for all of us to get more educated before we go into the ballots on November 8th. Make sure you do vote. This interview, along with all the interviews this morning, will be put on our YouTube channel, the KHTS YouTube channel, and you can check it out as well at our Facebook page, which is KHTS Radio. And Joe, we've opened this up, and we've been. I'll backtrack. Editorially and with our opinion, we are conservative. We admit that. But when it comes to our local news and when it comes to candidates in our local elections, we play it right up the middle. And so we've done this for 32 years, and we have a long track record of being fair to everybody out there. This year it surprised me because we sent invitations out to everybody, and as we'll see the rest of this morning, there are only a few candidates from both sides that have come. And so you're sitting here alone right now for the next 30 minutes because your candidate that's running against you decided not to even respond to us.
Yeah, it's interesting. My candidate and some of the others have chosen not to respond either. A lot of times and not show up at these things. As you know, we had an event at Grace Baptist, and I know he's going to get mad at me, but you know, when we're dealing at the level we're dealing at, you need to tell the truth. You need to be out there. Andrew Dumont didn't show up there. Now, he said he had something else going on, but he told me it wasn't inclusive enough. So what does that actually mean? It's not inclusive enough. Look, as a school board member, I know I've been tagged with many labels, as you know, over the years, and I'll meet with anybody. You know, people think that I'm pushing a right-wing Christian agenda, but I've met with people of all kinds of faith walks, all kinds of ethnicities and what have you, because every one of those people we serve. And so it really doesn't matter whether I'm in a comfortable or an uncomfortable situation. These are still people whose kids are in our district, and we need to be able to respond and deal with them. So I do not understand why they would be afraid of taking hard questions. I do not understand why you wouldn't come into a place like this and let people that maybe normally wouldn't hear you hear what you had to say.
And you've been outspoken with your positions and opinions, and kind of been a lightning rod out there on the school board. Why do you think that is?
I think I don't back away. Number one, you know, I'm pretty stubborn at times. But it's not because Joe says Joe dictates. I think that for years, you know, parents, one of the things I find when I go to the different groups, whether, you know, Asian or Indian or what have you, who came to this country, they're not used to being able to be involved with their government. Government really doesn't care what they have to say. So you've got to kind of encourage them to show up and have a voice. Well, they haven't had a voice. And so for years we've been reaching out, trying to get them to get involved. So when I hear what the community wants, when I see what's going on, sometimes the noisiest parents aren't the parents that are right. The other ones don't feel like they have a voice. So you have to go out of your way as a board member to reach out to other groups to find out what their concerns are. What do they need? And then you make your decisions from there. Now, you saw years gone by, they used to pummel me on Facebook for anything I said. It didn't matter what it was. And what's interesting is we've come back to that circle again, where now on my Facebook page, my campaign page, they're actually calling out the people that are giving me endorsements. You know, pastors and friends and, you know, other elected officials in a hateful way. And I'm pounding back on them. I won't let them get away with it. And I think that's what happens. We backed away over the years. We've allowed these things to fester, and I won't do it. I will not do it for them, for the kids, or what have you. And I think that's why I've been that lightning rod, because I won't back away from the situation.
We're talking with Joe Messina, who's the president of the William S. Hart School District Board, and it covers for Santa Cruz Valley all of our schools from 7th grade through 12th grade, right, with the exception of Castaic, which that district has pre-K through 8th grade, right, in there. What would, from your seat right now, and I know it's a moving situation, but what do you see as the three biggest issues impacting the Hart District from today's perspective?
Well, first of all, on everybody's mind is security and safety, and I pushed for, and I'm going to take a lot of credit for this, and forced the district to come up with a security symposium because people were saying, "What are you doing to keep our kids safe? We don't know what's going on. We don't feel like our kids are safe." Now that wasn't the majority; it was quite a few parents who just didn't know what was happening. So I said, look, we really need to get the message out to the parents and let them know what's going on. And we did that. And we had quite a few people show up at that security symposium. So with the way things are going today and the changes in technology and what have you, we're always going to be vigilant in trying to keep these kids safe. Remember, somebody who's going to hurt one of our kids only has to get it right once. We have to get it right 100% of the time. And when people talk about keeping our kids safe, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? It's guns, right?
Right.
There are so many other things going on other than guns. When you look at especially in this district, how long has the Hart District been around? Well over 50, 60 years. And we had a terrible incident back in 2019. But we've had so many kids die of drugs, drug overdoses, things like that. Kids, you know that, what is it, sex trafficking is on the rise. You don't hear anybody talking about these things. Those are all areas that we have to look at. You can't laser focus on any one thing in particular. So I see those kind of things. Keeping our kids safe when it comes to drugs and guns and other things on campus. There's a nationwide teacher shortage. So we're looking at that and how that's going to impact us, coming in over the years and what have you. And frankly, my personal issue and problem is career tech education. That's what I ran on years ago. We were making great strides moving forward, and then because of COVID, everything kind of came to a grinding halt. Well, when it comes to a stop, it takes a lot to get it rolling again, and that's what we're working on now because kids can't afford to go to college. There's many kids who can't afford to go to college, don't want to go to college, and my favorite saying is even the doctor needs a mechanic to help make sure his car's running so he can get to the surgery.
You really spearheaded the career tech side that landed with the building of Castaic High School. Why don't you share a little bit about that and what are they doing at Castaic High School that's different than the other high schools?
Funny you should say that because I just was up there the other day. Well, Castaic High School, first and foremost, when we were looking at that, we were looking for it to be a community school as well as a kind of a career tech ed school, if you would. And one of the ways we were looking to fill the school was we would make sure that kids from all over the valley, if they wanted to pursue a career in culinary or anything along those lines, we had a full program there that we could put them in school there. So I was up there the other day. We have probably the most pristine commercial kitchen in the valley at that school. So we're going to be looking not only at a culinary arts, but a food services program. So I've seen this at other schools where don't just learn how to cook. That's great. That's wonderful. How do you serve the food? How do you order the food? How do you know how to order ahead of time? Because there are basic business practices that go into effect here that our kids would love to learn. So I want to beef up that program there. Castaic has got a great dental, Dr. Gruel. I reached out to her, so we're going to bring her up there. She looked at we have a dental program up there. We've got 9 seats. If you're into wanting to have your teeth cleaned, go on up there. But she's going to help put a program together where we're going to reach out to the community and maybe kids who normally don't go to the dentist or couldn't afford to go to the dentist. She's going to put a program together to bring them in and allow that to happen. And if you've got insurance but you're not totally covered, she'll help with that as well while taking in interns to learn how to be a dental assistant and what have you. We've got a medical assistant program up there that we're looking to fill. Education's kind of tough when it comes to career tech ed because you have to get the teachers in, you have to get them certified. So frankly, the mechanic who's been a mechanic for 40 years, who's willing to teach, doesn't want to go back to school for a teacher's credential. So there are things that we need to do to help them get that.
And in the original plans, there was going to be a very tight relationship with College of the Canyons. So did that come to fruition? What's the status
Yeah,
of
there
that?
still is, but my and this isn't meant to be a negative at all. But my thing was that we should have always been automotive 101 and College of the Canyons is 102, right? So let us get our kids into these classes, give them kind of an introduction to, and then if they decide that's the road I want to go down, then hand them over to College of the Canyons, help them get in there and do a dual enrollment.
Let's switch gears for a second and talk about the vaccine for a moment, which is my pet peeve as well. But You're anti-vax. You've been vocal about being anti-vax. Why is that?
Well, a couple of things. If you want to take it at the rudimentary level, and I don't know if you want to just say anti-vax, it's kind of like, my body. I'm going to decide what I want to put in it. They say, well, we've had vaccines for kids for decades. Yeah, we also tested those vaccines for decades. We tested those vaccines for years, and when something went sideways, they cut them off until they figured out what was wrong with it. This was rushed to market. We're giving it to kids. We don't really know what the long-term effect is. We've seen some negative effects. We've seen some positive effects. So if you want to take it at the basic level, parents should have that choice as to whether they're going to allow their kids to be vaccinated or not. And I think that's where we've gotten away from it. Government knows best. We could go through a whole list of things that government has forced us to do over the years that have actually hurt us. So government does not know best. They're there to help and support. Parents need to make the final decision as to whether that child gets vaccinated or what have you.
Well, the CDC has just said that vaccines should be mandated for all kids. It will now revert to the states to make that decision. Being in California, I'm sure they're going. It's a done deal. So unless it gets tied up for a long time in court, we're looking in the short term of forcing vaccinations on all our kids. A lot of parents are not going to bring their kids to school, so the long term effect of this will be a shortage of students and therefore funding. So talk about that domino effect a bit.
So here's go back to the CDC approval. The CDC has an advisory board that has doctors from all over the globe, really. The advisory board advised against making this a mandatory thing. Yet the CDC in the 15-vote panel voted unanimously to make it. So that, for me, gives me pause right there and then. So now let's move into, again, the California. I already know a couple of the attorneys that will be immediately fighting this if it comes down as an edict that it has to be on. But there's a law that was on the books from 2015 that said, all the vaccines before this time are mandatory. End of discussion. Moving forward, not so much. You would have the option. So they're going to have to pull that back, and then instill a new law or start a new bill and make it a law. So I think it's going to be a fight. And to your point, they've already have co-ops, not private schools, co-ops, which are homeschoolers that come together for certain things and certain issues. And I can't force them to get vaccinated. And you are going to lose. Look at the people who've already lost in this state. To the point we've lost a congressional seat, right? There's a reality here. Now, they can say that's not true. People will come back in. We really haven't lost that many kids. If you go look at the demographic, our demographers came in 8 months ago and showed the loss of kids that we have and the loss of kids that will continue on for the next 3-4 years. And if things keep going the way they're going, I would imagine exponentially that's going to get worse. And to your point, we'll have less funding. If we have less funding, that means less teachers and less programs.
We're chatting with William S. Hart School Board President Joe Messina. We'll be back in a short moment right here on KHTS 98.1 AM 1220 and your hometownstation.com. KHTS FM 98.1 AM 1220, hometownstation.com. Carl Goldman with you, along with our candidate, who's also the president of the William S. Hart School Board, Joe Messina. We are all this morning talking with a variety of local candidates throughout the district, your chance to get educated before we go in and vote on November 8th. And we talked about you being a lightning rod for some things, but I'll throw some hardballs at you right now. And the first one being, there are a few books in our libraries. One is This Book is Gay. And you've been outspoken about that. Why?
Well, I was extremely outspoken about it, and not because right away, you got some of your listeners going, "Yeah, see, I told you he was, he's a homophobe." No, here's the deal: if the book was called "This Book is Straight," I still would have been against the book, because if you go through the book and you look, at first I thought This Book is Gay was about maybe young men that were dealing with being gay and really had no place else to go and wanted information. That's one thing. But when you get into chapter 9 of that book, it is almost a step-by-step on how to have sex. All right? And it's not acceptable. And as a matter of fact, I don't want to put anybody's names out there, but there were a few of our people in our gay community there at the district office and through the schools that said, yeah, this book is not acceptable. I wouldn't want my own kids reading this book. If it was a straight book about having straight sex, Joe would be standing there going, get the book out of the library. It doesn't belong there in a high school. It's not age appropriate. If these are things that parents want to teach their kids about, do it at home. Go to the public library, get the book, sit with your kids, and talk about it. The schools, as far as I'm concerned, has been a major overreach on these things. Reading, writing, arithmetic. I think we're 42nd or 47th in the country when it comes to math and sciences. Why do we need to teach kids how to have sex? Do you not think that they're having sex already in some areas? And that was one of the parents wrote to me and said, do you not think they're already having sex? Well, if that's your mindset, is they're already having sex, let them read these books, then why don't you put a six pack in their bedroom at night? Because they're already drinking. They're already vaping some stuff they shouldn't be vaping. They're already smoking dope. Just supply it to them. That is just a crazy mindset to have. So it wasn't the book in particular, because any book that in one of our libraries that's teaching kids how to have sex, how to do drugs safely, or anything like that, that doesn't belong there. That is not our place to be teaching.
We also had a report that in one of the classrooms in one of the high schools, there was the Mexican flag, the Black Lives Matter flag, and no American flag in the classroom.
Disgusting. You're paid in American tax dollars. You're protected by American police. You're protected by the American military. You're protected by the American government, yet you want nothing to do with the government. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Turn your check back in and we'll pay you whatever flag you're flying. We'll pay you in pesos or lira, or, if you're flying the Italian flag, if that's what you want. The bottom line is you need to be proud of this country. We've had hiccups in our history. Every country's had hiccups in their history, but we work hard to turn those around and make them better. And as far as the flag goes, we just had the dust up with the blue line flag and at the football game. And I know some of my colleagues don't agree with me and are actually even irritated for me for saying this. Our kids have a right to a freedom of speech. This line that flag is divisive, the people saying it are divisive. That flag represents to me and others that these policemen running in, those people are running in front of bullets. When has anybody from Antifa, BLM, or any one of those other organizations run in front of a bullet to save somebody? Nobody has. So we need not to be afraid to stick up for our kids. We need not to be afraid to stick up for their right for freedom of speech. If they don't have freedom of speech on the field, then the teacher should have no freedom of speech in the classroom to put up any flag they want to. This needs to be a mutual thing.
Speaking of law enforcement, your opponent has been saying that, and actually she wants to disarm the police that we do have, the sheriffs that we do have in the schools, and move it to a plainclothes person.
Yeah. She put that on Facebook. So what she wants is yard monitors is what she wants, right? How many times have maybe, I don't know, a shooter has gone by a school, and when they know that there's armed guards, armed police, people in uniform, chances are they're going to keep going. And those are CDC stats. You can look them up on your own. Why would you want to? What my opponent says and others that think like this is that there are kids that are afraid when they see the police. They're oppressed. Well, then we need to work on those kids. Why put 1,700? If you got 1,700 kids in the school and you got 8 or 9 of them that are afraid, or even 100 of them that are afraid, we're going to put the other 1,600 in danger? No, this is what we do. We did the same thing with the Hart Indian. We run away from this stuff instead of figuring out, okay, how do we educate? How do we help them overcome this and show them that these SROs on our campuses, the sheriffs, I'll tell you what, if you've ever been there when the sheriff shows up or he's around, he's surrounded by kids in a positive way, he or she. So we've got to stop this stuff where everything that we don't like or feel uncomfortable gets shoved under a rock somewhere, and we're done with it.
We're chatting with School Board President from the Hart District, Joe Messina. Carl Goldman with you here on KHTS AM 1220, 98.1 FM, and hometownstation.com. You've been on the board for how many years now?
13.
13. The lucky 13.
Oh, I was only going to be on 8, but go ahead.
Yeah, so, and you've shared that you don't want to run again at times, and yet here you are ready to run and with your sleeves pulled up and diving back in. What made you decide to do it this time?
Well, two things, actually. First of all, I was only going to run 8 years because I wanted to get career tech ed moving. I didn't think it was a big deal. Education, I have found out, is like running through molasses in the wintertime. It's just slow. But this time around, two things came up. We had COVID, so it reset career tech ed. I found somebody that was willing to run for office, a great guy with a family, exactly what we would need in a place like this. He got offered a job in Idaho for twice as much as he was making here. Can't fault him for that. When I saw the people stepping up that were thinking about taking the seat, I couldn't let it happen. I couldn't let it go by unchallenged. And you're talking about my opponent right now, really? So that's what we want to do. We want to disarm the police on campus. The same people that were running to save our kids on Saugus, we want to put them, take them out of uniform and put them in plain clothes. Her focus is only on one group of people, where my focus is on all the kids. I don't care what walk of life you're from, what you believe or don't believe. And I decided that, you know what, you need somebody with a strong voice who won't back down, because that's what I see some of the other trustees doing, to do what's right for all kids. And I'm not afraid to say that. They like to throw those darts at me, but I'll work for all kids. I don't care where you're from, what you're doing, and what you believe.
Sometimes those darts are thrown by other school board members. Share about that. What's your relationship with the other four members, and what's your vision for making that moving forward?
Well, what's interesting, and I've said this out in the open, this is the first time we haven't endorsed each other. So that says volumes. I don't even have to speak to that. Though we vote a lot alike, there's been plenty of 4-1 votes, and we are not on the same page in a lot of areas. I find myself, I know he may cringe right now, but I find myself in line with James Webb a lot when it comes to the financial issues. We very much look at things the same way. I think some of the relationships have deteriorated. Prior boards, we all got along great. We went to events together. We worked together to make things happen. That is not the same. I very rarely talk to some of the other board members anymore, and it's starting to feel like a us against them, or I'm watching when somebody comes to me and wants something, and it's not healthy. It's not good.
Do you think COVID had a partial say in all this because of everything having to be separated and being done virtually?
To a degree, but I mean, I have friendships with people during COVID I didn't see, and I'm still friends with them, and we're still close. I think COVID was an excuse to create chasms, to pull us apart. Look, I'm the only one on the board that wasn't vaccinated. You went through stuff yourself, I'm sure you've talked about, but the bottom line with it is, I'm the only one that hasn't got COVID up there.
Right. We did our Sacramento trip this year. I mentioned this a few minutes ago, and had four students, high school students, sharing their experiences during COVID and the social challenges that they had being locked down. What's the district doing right now to address some of the social void that took place during those 2-3 years?
Yeah, their social interaction, for all intents and purposes, was wiped out. But bottom line with it was, we are beefing up the wellness centers. We're beefing up counselors. We're making sure we have the people in place that need to be there. And we're doing a lot of work to help our kids out.
We're going to have to wrap it up, but thank you so much for joining us, Joe Messina. If you just tuned in, the other candidate chose not to be here. This is AM 1220 KHTS 98.1 FM, Santa Clarita Canyon Country.